Hello friends, welcome back to the garage. I'm Paulie, this is Mike, this is a 77 Corvette, and this is Paulie's Power Hour. So you see the Corvette, it's a 77, it's got a 350 in it with a turbo 350 trans. This is gonna have to go, and we're replacing it with this
355 425 horsepower Pro Street engine.
Yes. What you saw was us jockeying this thing into place. Motor mounts are here. The one thing to take into account when you do a engine swap and you leave the trans in place, especially when it's automatic, you have to use a transmission jack or something to raise the transmission, right? Because the motor's coming in like this and the trans hanging down like this. So you got to bring them up so they match each other. Needless to say, this actually went pretty quick. I'm surprised. I'm very thrilled. So now I'm going to stab the distributor in here, and we can hook up the torque converter and start dressing this motor. All right, we're going to talk about distributors for a second. And later on, I'll go into top dead center, bottom dead center, all that crap, right? So right now, this engine is at top dead center, okay? That means we're on TDC #1 on the compression stroke. The general consensus is everyone says point it towards the #1 cylinder, which is here, right, when you stab this distributor. But you really want to point it to where #1 is going to be on your distributor cap, because on the compression stroke you're firing the #1 cylinder, okay? So it really doesn't matter where the distributor points, as long as you make sure that you put #1 plug on the appropriate terminal where the rotor facing, and then 18436.572, which is your firing order. Now, one thing you can do, look down in here, you can see that the oil pump drive shaft, there it is. If you spin that to accept the bottom of the distributor, which is here, all right, I'm going to spin that to accept the distributor. Voila! So, one thing we do want to make sure of is that the distributor is properly seated. It will compress the gasket. Alright? I have this rotor button pointing at the #1 cylinder. So when I put this on, that means this is going to be the #1 cylinder. Gorgeous distributor hold down is in, and hand tight yet, just so we can still spin. So this is going to be #1, and I marked right here on this tack resistor where #1 is. So we have a frame of reference for TDC when we start this whole process, but we're going to leave it there for right now. So one issue we just ran into, and something to keep in mind when you get your engines back from machine shops or you buy crate engines, this little guy right here is what your oil filter interfaces with. Always double check to make sure you have that before you get too far ahead of yourself, because sometimes if you have an old engine or you just bought an engine, you may have to source that. And of course that goes, you know, right here where your oil filter goes. It's held in by two 7/16 bolts. Reusing your old one's no big deal. Just brake clean it really well so you get all that old oil out of it. But just keep in mind that if you don't have an old engine and you just bought this thing and it came in on the crate, that you might have to source one of those, and that might be one more added expense to your process here. Now we're working on the headers. I prefer a bottom-up approach. So, you know, motor mounts, trans mount, bell housing, headers are, you know, usually they come up from underneath. What's up? You need a ratchet?
Yes, please.
Headers usually come up from underneath, and where the hell did it go? So like I said, I prefer a bottom-up approach where we'll start everything on the bottom and we'll work our way up. So an important safety tip. When you're putting your headers on, I prefer to use these Remflex gaskets. They're compressible graphite and they work really, really well. They seal. I haven't had a problem with them leaking, and I put them on everything. So keep in mind with headers, you want to work your way from the inside and out. And then if you have any special studs or anything like this, you want to make sure you torque those just as much as you torque the other bolts. One thing that I like to do is detail, attention to detail, right? So we painted the brackets and the pulleys and everything else, and all of that is just going to make the engine bay look that much better. You know what I'm saying? You're not going to really attract any attention to the things you don't want to attract attention to. What you want to attract attention to is that beautiful big engine right here, right? You want this to be the centerpiece, and you want everything else in the engine bay to complement the engine. There are varying stages of builds that people are going through, and I understand that because I have done the same thing. But there are some people that just look and say, oh, that's a nice engine, but look at that wiring. You didn't have time to do the wires. Well, maybe they didn't, but we do, so we're doing it, right? So we pop the hood, Mikey pops the hood, there's the motor, right? Boom, all the wiring is clean, everything's gonna be cleanly run, brackets are painted, and it's gonna be put together, and it's gonna look new, just like kit, when I put kit together. So speaking of, while we're here, we're doing this bracket. And so what I'm using is this wire brush on my drill. As always, some safety glasses, and we're just going to strip all this old paint off, and then we're going to paint this. As you can see, it's nice and clean. So we're going to hit this with some brake cleaner real quick on a towel. Cleaning so many years of road dirt off of this thing. So this is the color that Mikey decided to go with for pulleys and stuff under the hood. This is Krylon Rust Tough, and this is semi-flat, and I am a fan. I am not gonna lie to you. Like, these look awesome, I think. Yeah, so just gonna lay down a nice coat. All right, making progress. Mikey's working on the fuel pump, Colton is here, and I'm working on the balancer. As soon as Mikey can grab the flywheel holder for me, I'm gonna torque down the center nut, or center bolt, and yep, and the water pump goes on, and finish dressing it from there. Ready, Mikey?
Yeah, I think so. Hold on.
No, you're not. I just heard it come off.
Yeah.
Hold on to your lug nuts. It's time for an overhaul.
What direction are you going?
I'm going to the right.
To the right.
So I am going towards the driver's side of the car.
Clockwise.
Driver's side of the car. So So you're going to want to push it towards the passenger side of the car. So you got to flip it around. He had an issue with righty-tighty, lefty-loosey yesterday.
Upside down.
Upside down, yeah.
Yes.
Upside down and backwards.
Upside down and backwards, always.
All right. So you torque this to, we're going to do 55. Because that's what it is. But you want to torque this to, I guess I should run it in by hand first.
Yeah.
There we go. So you want to do 3 even steps. So we're going to start with 20 right there. Then we're going to do 45, and then we're going to do 55. All right, Mikey, here comes 45.
Okay.
And here comes, you ready?
Yep.
Boom! 55. I don't know what that was just now.
That was rock and roll.
So now we're going to fabricate a bracket that Mikey made a preliminary one out of a license plate.
Just for
That's going to go from here and here. And, yep, we're going to make it out of some aluminum. All right, so Mikey made this bracket. We know it works. I transferred it to cardboard. I made marks where the bends are going to be and the holes. And then I stretched it out and I transferred it to this piece of aluminum. And now we're going to cut it, bend it, and drill it. We got our bends. Now I'm gonna cut, and we're gonna grind and make this round. So for a pretty quick job, this didn't turn out too bad. So we're gonna bolt it in and we're gonna use it, and just send it. It's gonna be fun. Well, like a professional, Mikey's doing the best RTV job on this old, transmission oil pan here, which we got to change. And for all of you following at home, water pump is on, balancer's on, fuel system is in place, and the bracket is installed, so this isn't going anywhere. The AC compressor bracketry is installed, and the AC compressor comes next. That is the alternator bracket, and then I'm going to work on the power steering pump next, so we can button all this up. Button up the fuel system, sauce it up with some oil, put transmission pan back on, fill it with coolant, and turn the key. And put spark plugs in it too. Alright, so here we are. Day 3 of this Corvette adventure. And I've got my fresh cup of coffee. So here's where we stand. We pushed really hard last night to try and get this thing done, but that just wasn't in the cards. And sometimes that's just how things go, right? And you have 2 options at that point. You could either get really angry about it, which is counterproductive, or you can just take a step back and say, you know, we've invested time and money into it up until this point, and let's just take a break and come back tomorrow. So that's what we did. Mikey went to hit the key to prime the motor, and the starter's bad. So I went and I'm doing the same thing that I did for Kit, which is an LT1 style starter. And actually this one came with bolts. And I got these bolts to show you because sometimes when you have a small block Chevy, right, you might not have these bolts. And you want to use these bolts because of this knurled area here, okay? So, you know, so say like this bolt here is the bolt that Kit had. Now obviously this is too long, right? So what I did for Kit is I used some of this tube stock to manufacture a spacer. And then the spacer goes, so I just see the threads and boom, right? And it's the same thing like with this bolt. This is your average ordinary GM starter bolt, okay? So that goes up and through like that, right? And as you can see, the knurling is exposed, and that's not good. That's not what you want. So obviously, there you go. And you can see, obviously, these teeth are nice. All right, they're shaped properly. and we're not going to have any issues. But I was amazed when this thing came with its own bolts. That's really good. Hooray. That's less work I have to do in order to put this in. And this thing should just bolt right in here. Mikey's going to put a blanket on it later, and we're going to just call it good. So, car is up in the air. Let's get underneath there and swap this out. You also might notice that Mikey's not here. David's going to be here in a little bit to help, but he's got some family stuff going on. He's got to work, right? And you know, we're really good friends, and I don't mind. I love this stuff, okay? So I don't mind helping him out and getting this thing fired up. About the only thing that has me bummed out is the fact that he's not going to be here when we turn the key to light this thing off for the first time. That's really all I'm concerned with. Like, I don't mind finishing this up for him. I have done way more for people that I liked way less, right? So, you know, I don't care. David's going to be here. We're going to knock this out. We're going to get it running, and we're going to drop it off at his house. And he is going to have many years of trouble-free driving with this, and it is going to be amazing. So surround yourself with good people that you trust, folks, because this car community of ours is only as good as we make it. Alright, so we got the starter on, and we turn the key, and we still get a grinding sound. And as I'm trying to figure this out, we disconnected the torque converter, spun the torque converter. I was thinking maybe the torque converter wasn't engaged on the pump all the way, or something along those lines. And then I started thinking, you know, this old one is a 2-piece rear main seal block, and this new one's a 1-piece rear main seal block. So maybe there was an issue with spacing of the back of the crankshaft. Maybe we needed an adapter or something. And it turned out to be the flex plate is bent. Probably bent in shipping. Now, what's the flex plate, you ask? So this is the flex plate, right? And it goes on the back of the crankshaft, and it keeps, or well, on this car it's balanced. This is an externally balanced crankshaft on the new motor, but this one is internally balanced, so this doesn't matter. I can swap this out with anything. Matter of fact, I have one sitting over there that I could probably use. But yeah, so the torque converter bolts here, here, and here, right? And this is what interfaces the transmission to the engine. And ours is bent. It's bent in, the starter gear sits here, and as this rotates, it hits the starter gear. So, piss. So aside from the flex plate being bent, and I mean, really, besides that bolt, which wasn't our fault, somebody else had done that. But really, that's the only piss moment of this entire thing. And if you look, this thing is ready to run. This thing is ready, right? I got the plug wires hooked up. All this wiring I've cleaned up and loomed. I'm probably going to put a little bit more loom on this just to make it look nicer. Over here, I had to remove the plug wire loom thing in the back here because these valve covers are taller. So the plug wires are now shorter, and I need to be able to adjust the distributor. So we're going to have to make new wires eventually. But I loomed all the alternator wiring. All this wiring in here is ready. I mean, look at this. This looks glorious, doesn't it? All the pulleys, all the bracketry is freshly painted. This thing is gorgeous, and the wiring is loomed, and this is the centerpiece right here. So what's the solution moving forward? Mikey's got a fresh flex plate on the way with some fresh ARP bolts that we're going to use to bolt it to the crank. We're getting a good one, a thick one, right? Still externally balanced, but thicker, more robust. And David and I are going to pull the trans, swap the flex plate, and put trans back in, hook it all up, and get it running for him. He's got a couple things coming up going on, and it's here in my garage, so and knock it out. So this is the end of the motor swap. I'm gonna end this video here. Good times with some really good friends. You know, I love this stuff. This stuff is a blast to me, and we did it right here in the garage, right? Cherry picker, you're obviously going to need that, but the rest is hand tools for working on these old cars. So get out there, get a project, and get something done. Maybe I'll do a video about how to pick a project, budgeting and stuff like that. I'm horrible at budgeting when it comes to projects. I am of the mind that I will do something once. That's it. If it's a little bit more than the cheap stuff, I'm going to get the expensive stuff. That's just me, because I want it to last. Follow along with the rest of this Corvette build, because this monster is going to roar to life in the next video, and it is going to be borderline biblical. It's going to be awesome. So, I'm Paulie. This is Paulie's Power Hour. Y'all keep it between the ditches and come back and see me.